In 1602, a herring fisherman named Peter, from the port of Enkhuizen, walked into a VOC subscription office in Amsterdam with 40 guilders saved from 3 seasons at sea and bought a share in the newly formed Dutch East India Company. He could not read the prospectus. He had never traveled further than the North Sea, and within 12 years, the quarterly dividends from that single purchase were paying his rent, his children's schooling, and the wages of 2 men who worked his expanded fishing operation. Number 6 on this list is the exact mechanism Peter used, and it was available to every Dutch citizen with 40 guilders and the nerve to sign their name. Number 14 transformed an ordinary fishing village into a global commodity market in under 30 years. And number 1, the method that built more middle-class Dutch fortunes than any other in the 17th century, required no ship, no spice, and no voyage further than the Amstel River. These are 20 forgotten ways that ordinary Dutch men and women built Europe's first genuine middle class during the Golden Age, before pension funds, before mutual funds, and before anyone had given this kind of financial participation a name. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button, because what the Dutch understood about accessible wealth building in 1620 is precisely what financial advisors charge thousands of guilders to explain today. Let us count them down. Number 20, herring bus ownership shares. The Dutch herring industry of the 17th century was not merely a fishery. It was an industrial supply chain that fed a continent, and the men who owned shares in the herring buses, the large specialized vessels designed for deep-sea herring fishing and onboard salting, earned returns that made the effort of equity ownership entirely clear. A single herring bus in 1620 cost roughly 400 guilders to build and equip, which was beyond the means of most individual fishermen, but well within reach if the cost was divided among 10 or 12 investors. Each investor contributed 30 to 40 guilders and received a proportional share of the annual catch proceeds after expenses. In a good year, a single bus could return 15 to 20% on the initial investment. In an exceptional year, the returns approached 30%. The Dutch fishing towns of Enkhuizen, Hoorn, and Vlissingen were built on this cooperative ownership model, and the men who participated in it, generation after generation, accumulated the steady compounding wealth that transforms a fisherman's family into a merchant family within 2 or 3 generations. Number 19, windmill share cooperatives. The Dutch landscape was defined by its windmills, and those windmills were owned not by individuals, but by cooperative share systems that allowed ordinary Dutch burghers to participate in the income they generated. A windmill capable of draining polderland, grinding grain, or sawing timber for the booming Amsterdam construction industry represented a capital investment of 1,000 to 1,500 guilders in the early 17th century. This was beyond most individual craftsmen, but entirely accessible to a group of 10 to 15 investors, contributing 100 guilders each. Each shareholder received proportional income from the mill's operations, returning 8 to 12% annually in a productive district. The windmill cooperative model was so successful that by 1650 there were nearly 9,000 windmills operating in the Dutch Republic, the majority owned by cooperative share arrangements rather than by individual wealthy proprietors. This was the Dutch middle class literally engineering its own financial infrastructure into the landscape. Number 18, peat extraction and fuel distribution. The Netherlands sat on enormous deposits of peat, the primary domestic and industrial fuel for Northern Europe, before coal became dominant, and a Dutch entrepreneur with modest capital could lease a peat extraction license, hire day laborers to cut and dry the peat, and sell it to urban households and industrial operations at a substantial markup over extraction costs. In the mid-17th century, a peat merchant working a productive bog with 10 laborers could earn a net profit of 300 to 400 guilders per season, a very substantial annual income for someone operating at this scale. As long as Dutch households burned peat for heat and Dutch industries used it for brick firing, brewing, and salt refining, the peat merchant's income was as reliable as winter itself. Number 17, grain warehouse receipts and commodity trading. The Amsterdam grain trade operated on a system of warehouse receipts identical in structure to modern commodity futures trading, and it created significant income for Dutch merchants who understood how to use it. A merchant who deposited grain in one of the great Amsterdam warehouses received a standardized receipt that could be sold, pledged as collateral, or used to settle debts without the grain ever physically moving. A skilled grain trader who understood seasonal price cycles and could judge when Amsterdam prices were artificially depressed by temporary oversupply could earn returns of 20 to 40% on employed capital in a single trading season. The men who mastered this system needed no farmland, no ships, and no warehouses. They needed capital, knowledge, and the discipline to act on price differentials when they appeared. Number 16. Amsterdam Exchange Bank Deposit Income. The Wisselbank, founded in Amsterdam in 1609, was the most sophisticated banking institution in the world, and it created a specific income opportunity for Dutch merchants that had no equivalent anywhere else in Europe. Depositors received bank money, a credit balance that traded at a premium over physical coin because it was safer, more reliable, and accepted everywhere in Amsterdam without question. The premium on bank money over physical coin fluctuated between 1 and 5% depending on market conditions. A merchant who understood this premium could earn consistent arbitrage income by moving between physical coin and bank money as the premium fluctuated. More practically, the reliability of bank money reduced transaction costs for every merchant who used it, effectively increasing the net return on every trade by eliminating the friction of coin weighing, assaying, and the risk of counterfeit currency that plagued commerce everywhere outside Amsterdam. Number 15. VOC Bond Investment. While equity shares in the VOC represented the highest returning but most volatile investment available to Dutch citizens, the company also issued bonds paying fixed interest rates of between 5 and 8% annually, secured against the company's physical assets and future revenues. These bonds were accessible to investors with as little as 100 guilders and provided a reliable income stream requiring no active management and no maritime expertise. A Dutch widow, a retired craftsman, or a cautious merchant who had sold his active business could place his capital in VOC bonds and receive a dependable quarterly payment that covered household expenses without requiring further labor. This was the 17th century equivalent of a government bond, and its reliability was the foundation on which many Dutch middle-class retirements were effectively built. First pattern break. Here is where things get interesting. Because the entries so far have all involved financial instruments and investment vehicles, but the next entries describe something different, the practical commercial methods by which ordinary Dutch people generated operating income from the physical economy of the Golden Age, several of which are so simple and so effective that their disappearance has more to do with social and regulatory change than with any technological obsolescence. Number 14. The herring gibbing and curing trade. The Dutch herring industry's dominance of European protein markets was built not on fishermen's skill, but on a single technical innovation, the gibbing method developed in the 14th century and perfected by Dutch curers over 200 years. Gibbing involved removing the gill and part of the gullet from freshly caught herring in a single swift cut before salting, allowing digestive enzymes to continue working during curing and producing a flavor that consumers across Europe recognized as distinctly superior to all competing herring preparations. The men and women who performed this gibbing operation were paid on a piece rate basis, typically 1 to 2 guilders per barrel of finished herring, and a skilled gibber working at speed could earn 3 to 4 guilders per day, journeyman craftsmen's wages for work requiring no apprenticeship and no capital beyond a small curved knife. The Dutch herring curing industry exported over 500 million herring per decade at its peak in the mid-17th century, and the skilled gibbers who produced this product were among the best-paid piece-rate workers in the Dutch Republic. Number 13. Linen Bleaching Field Operation. A bleaching field operator near Haarlem, the center of the Dutch bleaching industry, would lease several acres of flat meadow, construct simple wooden frames for stretching cloth, and process incoming gray linen through a sequence of soaking, laying out, watering, and sun bleaching requiring several months of careful attention but no sophisticated machinery. The fee for bleaching a bolt of linen ran between 8 and 12 guilders in the mid-17th century, and a well-run bleaching operation processing 50 bolts per season could earn 400 to 600 guilders in net profit, an excellent return on the modest capital required for a seasonal lease and basic equipment. The cloth came from the Flemish and German weaving districts that needed finishing before it could be sold as fine white household linen, ensuring a steady stream of incoming work that made the Haarlem bleachers some of the most reliably employed craftsmen in the Dutch Republic. Number 12. Map and print publishing. The Dutch Republic was the center of European map and print publishing in the 17th century, and smaller operators who owned a single printing press and a collection of copper plate engravings could earn consistent income by printing and selling maps, prints, and illustrated books to the enormous Dutch middle-class market that was hungry for decorative and informative printed material. A single copper plate of a popular city map could produce several hundred impressions before wearing out, with each impression selling for between 10 and 30 stewards depending on size and complexity. A small print shop with 10 productive plates in regular use could earn 200 to 300 guilders per year from print sales alone, supplemented by job printing for merchants needing trade cards and commercial announcements. Second pattern break. This next one is where the math gets fascinating, because the next entries describe how the Dutch middle class did not merely earn income, but built specific systems for preserving, growing, and transmitting that income across generations in ways that no other European society had yet invented. Number 11. Textile merchant factor operations. A Dutch factor in Amsterdam would receive consignments of finished cloth from producers in Leiden, Haarlem, or the German textile districts, sell them to buyers across Northern Europe using the Amsterdam Exchange Network, and take a commission of 3 to 5% of the sale value on each transaction. A factor with a productive network of cloth producers and a reliable list of regular buyers could process 20 to 30,000 guilders worth of cloth per year, earning between 600 and 1,500 guilders in pure commission income from transactions requiring no capital at risk, no inventory ownership, and no manufacturing expertise. Number 10. The tulip bulb propagation trade before the crash. Before the famous mania of 1636 and 1637 distorted all rational pricing, the tulip bulb trade was a genuine horticultural business, rewarding skilled growers with reliable income. A Dutch bulb grower in the Haarlem district, who could produce certified offsets of the most sought-after striped and broken varieties, earned between 10 and 50 guilders per bulb, depending on rarity and visual quality. A skilled grower with 200 certified parent plants could produce 300 to 400 offsets per season and sell them into a market that, before the mania accelerated prices to famous extremes, rewarded genuine horticultural skill with genuine horticultural income. The growers who had not overextended into futures contracts and continued growing bulbs as a trade rather than a speculation generally survived the crash and continued working their gardens into the 1640s and beyond. Number 9. Notarial and legal document services. Amsterdam's sophisticated commercial economy generated an enormous volume of legal documentation requiring notarial authentication, and a busy Amsterdam notary in the 1640s authenticated between 500 and 1,000 documents per year at fees ranging from a few stewards for simple acknowledgements to several guilders for complex partnership agreements. The total annual income from a productive notarial practice ran between 300 and 600 guilders, comfortable middle-class income for work requiring literacy, a small office, and the professional reputation that came from years of reliable service. Number 8. Insurance underwriting for maritime cargoes. An insurance underwriter in Amsterdam would agree, for a premium of 2 to 4% of the insured cargo value, to compensate the cargo owner for losses from storm, piracy, or shipwreck on any of the dozens of trade routes connecting Amsterdam to the Baltic, the Mediterranean, and the East Indies. A merchant who understood actual risk levels on different routes, who knew which captains were reliable and which routes genuinely dangerous, could build an underwriting portfolio, generating consistent income from premium collection while paying claims far less frequently than the premium rates implied. One Amsterdam insurance operator documented in the city's notarial records for the 1650s underwrote 40 policies per year at 60 guilders each, collecting approximately 2,400 guilders in annual premiums while paying 3 claims per year at 200 guilders each, netting over 1,800 guilders annually from pure risk underwriting. Number 7. Grain and commodity arbitrage between Dutch ports. The Dutch Republic's geography, with multiple major ports and an extensive inland waterway network, created persistent price differentials for grain, timber, salt, and other bulk commodities between cities that a mobile merchant with a small boat and reliable market intelligence could exploit systematically. A merchant operating interport arbitrage with a small inland cargo boat and a capital base of 500 guilders could make 3 to 5 round trips per month during the active season, compounding returns that, on an annualized basis, approached 30 to 40% on employed capital. Number 6. VOC share ownership and dividend income. When the Dutch East India Company issued its first shares in 1602, it accepted subscriptions from anyone who could produce the minimum investment, but also accepted partial subscriptions as small as 50 guilders, making equity ownership in a global trading company accessible to craftsmen, farmers, and fishermen who had never previously had access to investment instruments of this kind. The dividends paid by the VOC between 1602 and 1700 averaged approximately 18% of par value annually across the century, with exceptional years returning over 50% and lean years returning 8 to 10%. An investor who placed 100 guilders in VOC shares at the 1602 offering and reinvested all dividends would have accumulated a position worth over 4,000 guilders by 1650. Third pattern break. Here is where the story becomes personal. Because the next entries are not about financial instruments or commercial systems. They are about the practical, physical trades that gave Dutch families the initial capital to participate in the investment systems described above, the foundation income that made everything else possible. Number 5. The Amsterdam Canal Boat Freight Service. A canal boat operator with a single vessel in Amsterdam in the 1640s could complete 6 to 8 freight deliveries per day at between 5 and 15 stuvers per delivery, earning between 200 and 300 guilders per year in net income after vessel maintenance and the modest licensing fee required to operate on the city's canals. The demand was constant, the competition was manageable, and a reliable operator with regular commercial customers could hold his routes for decades. The canal system that made Amsterdam the richest city in the world also made the man who serviced that canal system one of its most reliably employed workers. Number 4. Skilled house painting and decorative trade. A skilled house painter in Amsterdam in the 1650s earned between 1 and 2 guilders per day for interior decoration work, representing annual income of 200 to 400 guilders. The extraordinary wealth of Dutch Golden Age society expressed itself in domestic decoration to a degree unmatched anywhere else in Europe, and the skilled craftsmen who served this market earned incomes that reflected the genuine premium placed on quality finish work. The best decorative painters who could execute the fashionable trompe-l'oeil architectural perspectives that wealthy Amsterdam canal house owners demanded earned considerably more, and the most skilled among them built savings that allowed them to invest in the windmill shares and VOC bonds described earlier in this list. Number 3. Printing and distributing commercial newspapers. The world's first regular commercial newspaper was published in Amsterdam in 1618, and within a decade the Dutch newspaper trade had expanded to include dozens of titles reporting on commodity prices, ship arrivals, political events, and commercial opportunities. A small newspaper operation in Amsterdam in the 1640s, with 500 weekly subscribers at 1 stuver each, earned over 100 guilders per year from subscriptions alone, with additional income from commercial notices paid by merchants wanting their goods and cargo arrivals announced to the reading public. Number 2. The Amsterdam Retail Shopkeeper Economy. A retail grocer in Amsterdam in the 1650s who stocked spices, dried goods, and preserved foods for the middle-class household market earned a gross markup of between 30 and 50% on wholesale costs, with a net profit after rent and wages of between 300 and 500 guilders per year. This was not spectacular wealth, but it was reliable, growing in proportion to the neighborhood's prosperity, and capable of being passed to children who understood the trade. The Dutch retail shopkeeper was the foundation layer of the urban middle class, and the accumulated savings of a generation of Amsterdam grocers, spice merchants, and linen sellers funded the investment economy that the first 15 entries on this list describe. Number 1. Compound dividend reinvestment through the VOC and successor companies. At the very top of this list sits not a single trade or technique, but a discipline, the practice of systematically reinvesting dividend income into additional shares rather than consuming it as current income. A Dutch craftsman who invested 100 guilders in VOC shares in 1602 and reinvested every dividend for 40 years would have accumulated a position worth many thousands of guilders by 1642, an amount representing 20 years of skilled artisan income from an initial investment equal to roughly 1 month's wages. The principle was understood clearly by the most financially sophisticated Dutch citizens of the period and acted upon systematically by a class of investors that had no equivalent anywhere else in the world. These 20 forgotten methods share a single insight that defines the Dutch Golden Age achievement. The Dutch did not build Europe's first middle class through conquest, through aristocratic privilege, or through access to resources that others lacked. They built it through the systematic application of accessible financial instruments, practical commercial knowledge, and the discipline to reinvest returns rather than consume them. The herring fisherman with 40 guilders, the windmill shareholder with 100 guilders, the canal boat operator with a single vessel, all of them participated in an economy designed to reward participation at every level. Try one principle from this list this week. Find the accessible investment vehicle in your own economy. Identify the overlooked commodity arbitrage in your own city, and above all, reinvest rather than consume. Your Dutch ancestors built the first modern middle class on exactly this foundation. The knowledge is still here. They knew. Now you know. 2.